steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Touchdown! Kansas City! Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome in again to another Sunday evening here on KC Radio 97.7 FM for some Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on what is the penultimate Sunday night of the 2020 NFL regular season. We will come together once more after tonight, next Sunday night, for the regular season, and then it will be into the playoffs for an NFL season that has become, can you believe, the first NFL season to have a game played on every day of the week, with Saturday's game being played on Christmas Day, Boxing Day our time, of course, Christmas Day American time. The 2020 NFL season now becomes the first season ever to feature at least one game on every day of the week. If there was ever going to be a season, or a year, I should say, that captured that record, it would be 2020, wouldn't it? We had Week 16 kickoff already. We had that game on Boxing Day yesterday, and then 3 games earlier today, all of which had an impact on the playoff picture, including the final game, which was an absolute bonkers finish to that one. But before we go ahead and have a look back and have a look at what happened already in Week 16 and then turn our attention to what lies in store tomorrow, we'll go back and have a look at Week 15, which kicked off all the way back on Thursday week ago with Thursday night football, and it was the LA Chargers who had a close win in overtime over the Raiders. The Chargers got their 5th win of the season, 30-27 in that game that, of course, finished with the goal line rushing touchdown, or the leap into the end zone for Justin Herbert, who had a rushing touchdown there one play after he fumbled it, of course, and then it came back and they had another go and won that game. Justin Herbert in that game, he had his 7th 300 passing yard performance of the year, which broke the rookie record. So that was the Chargers winners on Thursday night in Week 15. Saturday, we then had a couple of games. We had Buffalo flexing their muscle and having a big win over Denver, 48-19, and in the process, the Bills clinched their first AFC East title in 25 years. It was a performance with Josh Allen putting the team on his back, throwing for a couple of touchdowns and almost 360 yards and a couple of rushing touchdowns as well, I should say. And that was a performance in which Buffalo eliminated Denver officially from the postseason. And the other game there on Saturday, the Carolina Panthers just fell short of the Green Bay Packers. The Packers won 24-16. The Panthers played the Packers tough in that one, but ultimately it was Aaron Rodgers and the gang there who were too good, and that sent the Packers to 14-2 at home under Matt LaFleur. The Sunday games, Indianapolis had another close victory over Houston. That's 2 now. The last one by 6 points, this one by 7, 27-20. Phillip Rivers was 22 of 28 for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. Indianapolis, they have surrendered their defense, over 400 total yards for the second straight game, so some issues there. And for the Texans, Kiki Kuti, the wide receiver, fumbled while frantically trying to reach for the goal line late in the fourth quarter, so another heartbreaking loss there for the Texans as a result of another goal or fumble. As they were knocking on the door. Indianapolis, they've won 10 of their last 13 games with that win over Houston. The New York Jets, big upset, huge upset. They finally got their first win of the season at the 14th attempt, beating the Rams 23-20. The defense held the Rams to 303 yards. Sam Darnold 207 yards and a touchdown. It only took 2 sacks, which is incredible because it felt like Aaron Donald was chasing him all day. To open the third quarter, the Rams defense gave up an 11-play, 72-yard drive that put them down early in the second half, 20-3. The Jets, first win of the season, but it's their first win since Week 17 of last season, so they're finally on the board, the New York Jets. Tennessee, they were too strong for Detroit, 46-25. Tannehill controlled the game there for Tennessee, completing 77.8 of his passes. 27 attempts in that one and 273 yards with 3 touchdown passes. Derrick Henry just continues to run all over opponents, 147 yards last week. For the Titans, Matt Stafford completed 22 of 32 passes for 252 yards and a touchdown, and looked good despite not practicing during the week because of the rib injury that he suffered the week before. A loss officially eliminates the Lions from the playoffs. They're 5-9. After that one, Tennessee, they got their 10th win of the season. They have 10-plus wins in a season now for the first time since 2008. Tampa Bay, they got a good win over Atlanta, 31-27. The Bucks earned 60 total yards in the first half, in 5 drives in the first half, and trailed 17-0 at halftime. And then the Bucks scored on their first 5 possessions in the second half and wiped away the deficit in the blink of an eye. Tom Brady found Antonio Brown for the game-winning strike in that one. Calvin Ridley was good again, 10 catches, 163 yards and a touchdown. He was huge, but another second half collapse from the Falcons was the story in that one. Tom Brady is now 7-0 against the Falcons, including the playoffs and including a Super Bowl as well, which was the most famous collapse of all for the Falcons. Baltimore made minced meat of Jacksonville, 40-3. Lamar Jackson, 17 of 22 for 243 yards and 4 touchdowns, 3 passing and 1 rushing. Des Bryant got his first touchdown, I should say, in over 3 years. So he's back into the fray there for the Ravens. Gardner Minshew, 22 of 29, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns and a lost fumble. So another so-so performance from Gardner Minshew. Baltimore, they've won 3 straight now. And they had lost 4 of the last 5. So they're starting to get ahead of steam as we head into the playoffs. Miami beat New England 22-12. This game had a thrilling score of 9-7 late into the third quarter. Miami, they won the time of possession battle by nearly 15 minutes in this one. The loss ends New England's record-setting run of 11 straight playoff appearances. They will have missed the playoffs for the first time since 2008, will the New England Patriots. The Chicago Bears got a good win, another good win over Minnesota, 33-27. Trubisky continues to play well down the stretch, 15 of 21, 202 yards, a touchdown and an interception. And David Montgomery has been in absolutely phenomenal form, 146 yards last week and 2 touchdowns. Chicago, they've scored 30-plus points in 3 straight games for the first time since 2013, and they did so again in a nice win over Minnesota. Seattle, they were in a hard-fought one there over Washington. They beat them 20-15. They clinched a playoff berth in doing so, Seattle. The vaunted Washington defensive line, which had logged 12 sacks over the previous 4 weeks, had none against Seattle. So the Seattle O-line stood up well. Carlos Hyde had a 50-yard touchdown run there for the Seahawks. Dwayne Haskins flashed a little bit of potential against the league's worst passing defense, but he put up 2 picks and took 2 killer sacks in that one, so couldn't get the job done there, unfortunately, for Washington, who went down to Seattle. Arizona, they were in a high-scoring game, and they had a close win over Philadelphia, 33-26. Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts combined for 744 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. So it was a back-and-forth one, this one. Kyler Murray himself had 406 passing yards, which was a career high. And the Philly O-line surrendered 6 sacks of Jalen Hurts, so he was running for his life in that one. Arizona, with that win, they now sweep the NFC East. 4 wins over the hapless NFC East, so 33-26 winners there. The Cardinals, Kansas City, they beat New Orleans in what was probably the highlight game of the round. Kansas City, they racked up 179 yards on the ground. It's most since week 6, running the ball on 41 of its 92 total plays. There was an injury, I should say, to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is a worry for the Chiefs moving forward. New Orleans, they essentially achieved everything that they wanted to do defensively. They held Kansas City below 250 passing yards, and they sacked Mahomes 3 times, but still couldn't get the result there. Drew Brees, he was visibly rusty, starting 0 for 6 in that one for the first time in his career. So that was a loss there for the Saints, unfortunately for them. Kansas City, they have now won 11 straight road games, which is the longest active streak. Dallas, they beat San Francisco 41-33. Tony Pollard, in place of the injured Zeke Elliott, had 12 carries for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns with 6 receptions and 63 yards. So he's having a fair old time of it with Zeke injured. Dallas, the defense is playing well as well. 2 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles, one on a kickoff return, which led to 24 points. Dan Mullins, the quarterback playing there for the Niners, he finished 21 of 36 for 219 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Dallas now have won 6 of the last 7 games against the 49ers, and they got another good win here, 41-33. Sunday night football, it was the Cleveland Browns victorious in a bit of a dour affair over the New York Giants, 20-6. Baker Mayfield, 27 of 32 for 297 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. Played some pretty clean football. The Giants had Colt McCoy play under centre for them, and he could not orchestrate a win for them, unfortunately, on Sunday night football, though they do remain in the thick of the action in that division. They're 5-9, and they're only 1 game back of Washington. Cleveland, in this one, they notched their 10th win, and they now have 10 wins for the first time since 2007, the Browns, as they head towards their first playoff appearance since 2002. And then on Monday night football, a boil-over, one of the big upsets of the season so far. We had a couple last week. This one was Cincinnati beating Pittsburgh 27-17. Running back Giovanni Bernard scored a pair of touchdowns to help build a 17-0 lead. Ryan Finley, who started this one, played okay. He was 7 of 13. He had 2 total touchdowns and one in the air and one on the ground, and didn't have any big mistakes. He just played a pretty clean game of football. Pittsburgh, the offense was held to less than 20 points for a 4th week in a row, which is a real worry. Ben Roethlisberger was 20 of 38, 170 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And in what was a pretty awful night for the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger did become the 7th player in the league to pass for more than 60,000 yards. So that was, I guess, a highlight on a pretty dirty night on the road for the Steelers. Cincinnati, it's their first win at home against Pittsburgh since week 2, 2013. So that was a really good Christmas present, I should say, for the Cincinnati fans who left that stadium. There was a few in attendance, and they left that stadium feeling really good about getting a win over the Steelers, who of course started 11-0 and have now dropped 3 games on the bounce and are in a little bit of trouble as we head towards the playoffs, although they still sit on top of the division in the AFC North. The biggest winner for me last week, I have to say, the New York Jets. I think I've had them as the biggest loser 3 or 4 times, I think, this year. I'm going to give them the biggest winner just because they won a game. A lot of people say they may have cost themselves the number 1 pick, and I suspect they might have, but there was no one in that building, be it coaches or players, who wanted anything to do with a 0-16 campaign. So they get their first win on the board, and they get their name into the biggest winner list from my perspective. And the biggest loser, I have to say, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They should not have lost that game. I know it was on the road, and I know it's a divisional game, but I mean, that's their 3rd loss in a row now, and they would have circled that game as a get-right game. Get a W on the board, move to 12 wins, and just get another win and move forward. But they were hapless. They looked like they were sick last week, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they were my biggest loser, and that was my recap of week 15. We'll take our first break, and then when we return, we'll turn our attention to what happened today and yesterday on Boxing Day, as well in week 16, and have a look at what lays in store tomorrow as well. When we return, I'm talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a bit. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday evening on KC Radio 97.7 FM, where before the break we went back and had a look at what happened in week 15 of the NFL last week. Now we're going to turn our attention to week 16, which has already begun. We had a game yesterday on Boxing Day, a really interesting result in that one between New Orleans and Minnesota, and then we had 3 games earlier this morning as well, including the last one between the Raiders and the Dolphins, which was just an absolutely crazy end to that one. The Dolphins ended up winning and eliminating the Las Vegas Raiders, and what a way for their season, their first season in Sin City to end. I'll get to that in just a sec, but let's go back and have a look at the game yesterday, which was the New Orleans Saints winning at home 52-33 and getting a little bit of revenge over the Vikings, who of course knocked the Saints out of the playoffs last week, but bearing the lead a little bit. The biggest story from this one was Alvin Kamara, who tied an NFL record with 6 rushing touchdowns, which matched Hall of Famer Ernie Nevers of the Chicago Cardinals. the Chicago Cardinals. In 1929, he also had a career-high, Kamara, 155 rushing yards on 22 carries. Also, Drew Brees in this one. It went a little bit under the radar. Drew Brees became the first player in NFL history to pass for 80,000 yards. Minnesota, they also had a record-breaking night, but not a good one. They had the most points given up in a game in their franchise's history since 1963, which was the second ever season. Of course, they were founded the year before the Minnesota Vikings in 1962. So the last time they gave up that many points in a game, Minnesota, most people in America hadn't heard of the Beatles. That's how long ago they gave up a score like that. So New Orleans, they go to 11-4 and clinch their fourth straight NFC South Division title, and the Vikings are mothballs for this year. The game's on Saturday. Tampa Bay, they absolutely blew the doors off Detroit 47-7. Tampa Bay clinched their first playoff appearance since 2007 with the win. Tom Brady, they have him to thank. 348 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half alone before he was pulled out of that one because his services were no longer required in a good way. Detroit, they lost Matt Stafford to an ankle injury early in that one. He's been banged up a lot this year, hasn't he, Matt Stafford? But he's done all he can to try and keep them in playoff contention, but they are no longer there. They've been eliminated. Detroit, strong win for the Bucs heading into the playoffs, and another awful season for Detroit. Coming to a close, the middle game this morning was San Francisco in a bit of an upset over Arizona, 20-12. Upset win for the Niners over Arizona, who could have sealed a playoff berth, the Cardinals, this weekend, and also with a win for Chicago over Jacksonville. That's not going to matter now, that game. They need to win next week, I should say, Arizona, to get in. Running back Jeff Wilson for the Niners, career-high 204 scrimmage yards, 183 of which were rushing. The Niners kicker Robbie Gould missed 2 field goals in a PAT. Luckily, that didn't come back to bite them. And Kyler Murray as well was injured on the last offensive play of the game. So we'll wait and see. And hopefully that's nothing too serious there. But he had to be helped off the field. He didn't look like he was in a good way at all. And then the final game, what a win for the Miami Dolphins in the final game earlier this morning. Miami 26-25 winners over the Raiders. Derek Carr ended up playing in this one actually after he hurt his groin a couple of weeks ago. The Raiders on the final possession, they played for a field goal. Josh Jacobs pulled up short of the end zone. They then took the lead with the Daniel Carlson field goal. Miami then took over and they took one shot down the field from Ryan Fitzpatrick, who would come in to replace Tua. A completion plus a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty got them into field goal range, and then Jason Sanders kicks the game-winning field goal with 1 second remaining. The Raiders eliminated in a heartbreaker, and they only have themselves to blame. You've got to put the ball in the hands of your gun players, and if they have a chance to score, they score. They reap what they sowed earlier today. The Raiders, they have no one to blame but themselves. So they are the 4 games that have taken place already in Week 16, and they will kick off, continue, I should say, tomorrow at 5 a.m. with the Indianapolis Colts at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before I get into this one, can I just say, really sad to hear the death of Kevin Green during the week. Hall of Famer, of course, Kevin Green, who played for a few franchises, including the Steelers, 3rd all-time in sacks. So really sad to hear of the passing of Kevin Green. As for the modern-day Steelers, we're not a good football group right now, said Mike Tomlin during the week, and I have to agree with him there. Pittsburgh, their 3rd consecutive defeat after 11 straight wins to open the season. Pittsburgh, they had more turnovers, 3, than first downs, 2, in the first half against the Bengals when they went down 17-0. Went into halftime, I should say, 17-0. There's trouble for the Steelers, and the trouble has only just begun. They have all sorts of salary cap issues. I think at the moment they're scheduled to be $60 million over the cap or something, so they're going to have to make some tough decisions in the offseason. They're likely going to lose some free agents as well. They have James Conner, who has looked by far and away their best running back this year when fit. Juju Smith-Schuster is a free agent as well. So too is their left tackle Villanueva, and Bud Dupree, who just did his knee a few weeks back, will be a free agent also. They're not going to be able to afford many of those guys, if any. So this really is the year where they sort of had to have a crack at the Super Bowl and win it, because there's some trouble on the horizon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really, they lost 3 in a row. The trouble may have only just begun for the boys from the Steel City. For the Colts, DeForest Buckner played through an ankle injury to record 3 sacks of Deshaun Watson last week. Indy, they own a +7 turnover differential in the last 3 games. They've not defeated the Steelers with a quarterback not named Peyton Manning since week 8 of 1994. Mark Herman was the quarterback on that occasion. They will be without both their left and right tackles, left tackle Anthony Costanzo and right tackle Braden Smith tomorrow, which is a little bit of a concern. The Steelers have had a good record over the Colts, as that last stat suggests. They've won 13 of the last 15 regular season games versus Indy. This is in Pittsburgh, but I cannot pick the Steelers at the moment the way they're playing. I just can't do it, so I'm picking the Colts to win and send the Steelers to a 4-game losing skid and 11-4. The next game is Atlanta, who travel to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Kansas City won 22 of their last 23 games, including the playoffs. 6 straight games they have won by 6 points or less, which is the longest such streak in league history. Can you believe? Kansas City accumulated last week more than 400 yards of offense and 32 points in a workmanlike performance. And they dominated the time of possession battle, which I mentioned before the break. 41 minutes and 14 seconds they had it for. The Saints, 18 minutes and 46 seconds. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was injured, though, in that one. So Le'Veon Bell is going to play in place of him, and he's going to have to play a big role as well. For the Falcons, another collapse, this time at the hands of the quarterback who orchestrated the franchise's most gut-wrenching loss in that Super Bowl. Of course, a couple of years ago, Matty Ryan earned 235 passing yards and 2 touchdown tosses in the first half. Last week, and in the second half, the offense could not get any sort of first down or momentum going, which caused their collapse. So no Julio Jones as well, again, for the Falcons tomorrow, which is a worry. Kansas City with a win tomorrow will clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I think they will win and clinch the number 1 seed. Chicago at Jacksonville is the next one. Chicago, their offense is suddenly fun to watch, with Mitch Trubisky playing with as much confidence as we've ever seen. He led the Bears on 7 scoring drives, taking just 1 sack and coming up with 8 timely rushes for 34 yards last week. David Montgomery, as I said, is in a hot streak as well. Career high 146 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Touchdowns now in 4 straight games for David Montgomery. Only 2 teams since the 1970 merger have lost 6 straight games in a season and made the playoffs. That's what the Bears are trying to do this year. They, of course, lost 6 straight games before going on this little run. James Robinson joins elite company with 1,400 or more scrimmage yards and 10 plus scrimmage touchdowns on the season. The last 5 rookies to do that were Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, and Zeke Elliott. That's 4. Robinson was the 5th one, but he will not play tomorrow, which is a bit of a blow for Jacksonville, who are allowing 30.2 points per game, which is the most in franchise history. But they are all of a sudden in the box seat, it looks like, to get Trevor Lawrence. So maybe not all is lost. Mike Glennon's going to play as well tomorrow for Jacksonville. So they've gone from Gardner Minshew to Jake Luton to Mike Glennon, back to Gardner Minshew, back to Mike Glennon. Good news for Jacksonville fans. Trevor Lawrence is not far away, as long as you can lose out and keep that pick 1. I don't think they will win tomorrow, though. They're at home, but they're at home, but I think the Bears will win and go to 8-7. Cincinnati at Houston is the next one. Houston, another crushing goal line turnover, buried the Texans last week against the Colts. Deshaun Watson is on track to become just the 4th player with 110 or more passer rating, 300 total yards per game on average, and fewer than 10 interceptions in a season. Interesting, during the week it was reported former Bengals coach Marvin Lewis is expected to interview for the Houston head coach job, so we'll see how that goes. Cincinnati, they didn't just beat the mighty Steelers last week. They sent the entire organization into a state of panic. A magnificent Christmas present, like I said. Good news as well. Joe Burrow posted on his socials during the week he's come back from ACL surgery. He's back on his feet, which is great for the Bengals. Houston, they've won 3 straight against the Bengals. I think they will win tomorrow. This is in Houston. I believe they will beat the Bengals again. The New York Giants at the Baltimore Ravens is next up. Lamar Jackson accounted for 4 more touchdowns last week. He's up to 10 in the past 3 games since returning from the COVID list. Ngakoue led the Ravens with 2 sacks, one of which forced a turnover fumble in the second quarter against his former team, of course, in Jacksonville. And the Ravens had 5 sacks altogether in what was a dominant performance defensively. Baltimore, they're back up now, and they must keep winning. They're back up into a playoff spot, but they have to keep winning with Miami, Cleveland, and Indianapolis all winning as well. If they get in the Ravens, they can do some damage. They've scored 116, or they have 116 points differential this season, which is the second most. The Giants are now in third place in the division after going down to the Browns last week. They posted a combined 13 points over the last 2 weeks, which is a worry, and they haven't scored 20 points or more in a game for over a month. Daniel Jones is back, so that's good news, I suppose, for the Giants tomorrow, who I think will go down to Baltimore. In Baltimore, the Ravens are starting to rock, like I said. Cleveland at the New York Jets is the final game in the early window. Cleveland, chaos earlier today with their wide receiver and tight end group declared high-risk close contacts. And they've placed the entire starting receiving corps, that's Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Donovan People-Jones, and Cardale Hodge, on the reserve/COVID-19 list. So that means likely those guys won't play, which is going to be interesting to see how they overcome that. The Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield, he continued a recent run of strong play, throwing for nearly 300 yards and 2 touchdown passes and 0 picks last week. Over these last 4 games, Baker Mayfield, he's thrown 10 touchdowns. He's averaging 308 yards a game and has just 1 interception. These little stretch of games for the Browns are some of the most important games for the franchise since the turn of the century. And Baker Mayfield is showing up and playing some clutch football. I did say a couple of weeks ago that Baker Mayfield, I alluded to the fact that he might be holding this franchise back a little bit. I said, in fact, that if they had Justin Herbert Cleveland, they would be a Super Bowl contender. Well, since then, Baker Mayfield has picked up his game. And with Baker Mayfield playing like this, still some issues on the defensive side of the ball. But if he plays like this, they are a Super Bowl contender, no doubt. One team that isn't, the New York Jets, there's always been a bit of a cosmic cruelty to Jets fandom. They finally get a win that might ultimately cost them a go at drafting their franchise quarterback after all these years in Trevor Lawrence. Jacksonville, they went to pick one, of course, having the easier strength of schedule despite both teams being 1-13. The Jets, they took just 2 sacks, which seemed like a miracle last week, like I said, with Aaron Donald proving a nuisance. The race for the pick one, the overall pick, might not be over, though. Jacksonville, their last 2, Chicago, of course, tomorrow, and then Indianapolis. The Jets have Cleveland tomorrow, and then New England. So we'll see how that all shakes out. With a win and a Colts loss, Cleveland will clinch their first playoff spot since 2008. They are the early window games, gang. When I return, I'll have a look at the mid-afternoon games from Sunday and Monday Night Football as well when we're back shortly on KC Radio 97.7 FM. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. Back soon. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday evening on KC Radio 97.7 FM, the penultimate Sunday evening of the 2020 NFL season, where before the break we went through and had a look at all the stuff that has happened already in Week 16, 4 games down, of course, in the penultimate weekend of the NFL regular season, 1 game on Boxing Day and 3 earlier this morning. We had a look as well at the games that are slated for the early window, of which there is a couple of really important ones, including Indianapolis at Pittsburgh. That will have ramifications up the top of the AFC standings, and then we've got just a bunch of games with some teams that sort of just need to win, like the New York Giants, Chicago as well, 2 teams who are sort of just off the pace in terms of the playoff race, although Chicago are just in, and then Cleveland at the New York Jets as well, which will be an interesting game to see how the Jets can maybe back up. Have they spooked themselves a little bit? Maybe getting a win last week, and maybe have they realised what a horrible mistake they've made? Surely not. I'm sure they'll try to win out and go into next season feeling good with a new coach, a new quarterback, and a new everybody. To the mid-afternoon games now, 8:05. We have Carolina travelling to the nation's capital to play the Washington football team. Did you guys see Dwayne Haskins during the week? He played last week for an injured Alex Smith, and then he was fined during the week $40,000, and he was stripped of his captaincy after visiting a strip club with no mask during the week. How dumb? I don't want to have a character assassination on anybody on this show, but how dumb can you be? This is a dude whose career really at Washington anyway is hanging by a thread. And, the only reason he got to play is because the quarterback that has come in and has taken his job got injured. That's the only reason he's playing, and then he goes and does something silly like this. I do wonder why was he fined and why did he have his captaincy removed? Was it because he wasn't wearing a mask, or was it because he was at a strip club? If he hadn't been wearing a mask, would things have been okay? Oh man, Washington were having a pretty good season and staying out of the headlines until Dwayne Haskins went and did this. It's disappointing after the football team held its own last week against a quality opposition in Seattle, going down 20-15 to Seattle last week. Washington, they're top 5 in points per game allowed and yards per game allowed as well. They last finished in the top 5 in both of those categories in 2004. So they're on track possibly to win this division, but they're on track to have a historically good season defensively as well. Washington, for Carolina, they've now lost 8 games this season by 1 possession, and they've lost 8 of their last 9 games as well. Of course, Ron Rivera, coach of Washington now, longtime coach of Carolina, coached them to the Super Bowl, of course, Super Bowl 50, which they lost to Denver, coaching against his former side for the first time. It looks like Dwayne Haskins may play again. Alex Smith, I saw earlier today, is only 50-50. So that'll be interesting if Dwayne Haskins can play and make amends perhaps. But I think that Washington should win this game. They've got more to play for than Carolina do, and I think they need to win this game, and I suspect they will at home and move to 7 and 8. A showdown next up in the AFC West, Denver at the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert emerged from, I guess you could call it a mini form slump last week to light up the Raiders' undermanned secondary in a 314-yard passing performance that included a 26-yard scoring pass to Tyron Johnson to tie the NFL's rookie passing touchdown record last week. Justin Herbert. Some bad news for the Chargers for this game tomorrow, though. There will be no Joey Bosa and no Uchenna Nwosu either, so 2 of the better pass rushers for LA. For Denver, Drew Lock couldn't build off his 4-touchdown explosion in Week 14 against the Panthers. Last week, he lost a fumble that was returned for a touchdown and made 2 throws that really should have been intercepted that weren't. Denver, they will have now, it is confirmed, they will have now their 4th straight losing season, which is the longest franchise streak since 1963 to 1972. So they've got a fair way to equal that streak, but this is the longest losing period that the Broncos have had in a while. They're a proud franchise. They're not used to losing, but that unfortunately, since their victory in Super Bowl 50, they've come accustomed to losing. Denver, though, they have won 4 of the last 5 against the LA Chargers, and of course they stole one late at the death earlier in the year against the Chargers with that late KJ Hamler touchdown pass. That one was in Denver. This one is in the City of Angels. It's in Los Angeles, and I think the Chargers, I think they will be too strong for Denver, although I'm sure that's what I said last time, so you never know with the Chargers. The next game up at 8:25 is a matchup in the NFC East. Here's a big one between 2 teams who are not out of the race yet in the division, Philadelphia and the Dallas Cowboys. Philadelphia 4-9-1, the Cowboys 5-9. A battle between 2 teams who, like I say, are still not in the hunt within the division, but losing. The loser of this game, I should say, will be eliminated. Jalen Hurts, the rookie, ended his 2nd career start last week, 24 for 44 of passing with 338 yards and 63 rushing yards and 4 total touchdowns. It was a great performance from Jalen Hurts, despite the fact that his team went down. Dallas, in the meantime, their defense followed up on its smothering Week 14 effort with one against Daniel Mullins last week of the 49ers, breaking up 8 passes and racking up 6 quarterback hits and 2 sacks. They've actually started to look a bit better, the Cowboys defense, the last few weeks, although they are allowing over the season as a whole 30.9 points per game, which is slated to be the most in franchise history if they keep that up. So it has been a poor season for the Cowboys, really, hasn't it, ever since Dak Prescott went down. This is an interesting game between 2 teams who have looked a bit better than they have through the first sort of half of the season. It's a tough one to call. I'm going to pick Philadelphia I just think they've looked a bit better and looked a bit more dangerous with Jalen Hurts. But in a strange kind of way, this will be an interesting game between two teams who are desperate to keep on winning and stay in the hunt. The next one is a matchup between two teams who are desperate to stay in the hunt. It's probably the pick of the games this week. It's the LA Rams who go to Seattle to play the Seattle Seahawks, who are 10-4. The Rams one game back in the division at 9-5. The Seattle defense, they shut out Washington for most of the first half, and then they come up with 3 sacks on Washington's final possession of the game. So they come up big when they had to. The Seattle defense last week, who have been much maligned this season. Of course, Russell Wilson, he didn't cross the 100 yards mark through the air until early in the fourth quarter, so it took a little while to get going. Seahawks, they notched their 2 longest runs of the season, a 38-yarder by Russell Wilson that keyed 1 touchdown drive, and then another that I spoke about earlier, Carlos Hyde's 50-yard touchdown run. In the third quarter, Washington's defensive line, which had logged 12 sacks over the month prior to their matchup with Seattle last week, they had none against the Seahawks, so a really good performance by Seattle's offensive line. The Rams, they dug themselves into a double-digit hole last week, and then they watched their comeback attempt get short-circuited by miscues and penalties in the second half. The Rams' first 5 possessions last week, they went 3 and out, had a punt block, an interception as well then after 4 plays and a 3 and out. So you start any game like that, you're not going to win too many regardless of the opposition. No Cam Akers for the LA Rams. That's a bit of a disappointing loss for the Rams, especially after he played so well the other week against the Patriots. Seattle, they will clinch their first NFC West title since 2016 with a win. If the Rams win, both of these teams will be equal on record, but the Rams will go above them by virtue of sweeping them. Of course, they beat them earlier in the season, and if they beat them tomorrow, they will go above them. They've been a bit of a bogey team, the LA Rams, for Seattle, and I'm going to pick them to beat them again. They're a little bit hot and cold, the Rams. I don't really know what I'm going to expect from them with each passing week, but I think they know how to play Seattle. They know how to beat Seattle, and I think they will beat Seattle tomorrow. Sunday night football is a really good game. It's Tennessee at Green Bay. The 10-4 Tennessee Titans at the Packers, who are 11-3. Rodgers, quiet-ish last week, only 143 passing yards, no passing touchdowns, but a rushing touchdown. The Green Bay defense made plays, though, including rookie linebacker Chris Barnes, who poked the ball away from Teddy Bridgewater, who, of course, was diving into the end zone and couldn't quite get the touchdown there. Green Bay as well, their center, Corey Linsley, will be back off IR and will play tomorrow on Sunday Night Football, so that's a big get for the Packers to have Linsley back. For Tennessee, Derrick Henry was the star, like he normally is, but it was Tannehill who accounted for 5 touchdowns in the big win over Detroit last week. The Titans, they gave up 4th and 7th round picks to acquire Tannehill, as well as the 6th rounder that they gave back to the Dolphins in March 2019. I don't feel like that trade is spoken about enough. That is, an unbelievable trade when you think about what they gave up and then the dividends. I mean, they have their quarterback now. They're winning games, likely going to win the division, and they're in the thick of the Super Bowl hunt as well in the AFC. So to give up a 4th and a 7th round pick to get basically a discarded, steak knives, I guess, sort of quarterback, an unbelievable trade there for the Tennessee Titans. I don't think even they could have thought that it would work out as well as it has. Both of these teams are averaging 30 points a game this season. It's the 3rd meeting between two teams who have averaged 30 or more points a game in week 14 or later in a season. The last 2 occasions, the road teams have won on each of those occasions, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. Could that be an omen? I'm not sure Tennessee will win tomorrow, but that's an interesting stat. I think Green Bay will win again. They haven't lost at home under Matt LaFleur at Lambeau Field, and I think that run will continue. And then Monday Night Football, it's Buffalo at New England. The 11-3 Buffalo Bills, who are AFC East champions for the first times in a quarter of a century, and New England, who are out of the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Since 2008, in fact, they are 6-8, the Patriots. Buffalo, they piled up 534 yards of total offense last week in a complete and utter domination of Denver. Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley will soon become the first pair of Bills receivers, I should say, to each go over 1,000 yards in the same season since Peerless Price and Eric Moulds did it back in 2002. The Bills are 2-16 at Gillette Stadium in the Bill Belichick era as coach of the Patriots for the first time, like I mentioned a moment ago, since 2008. The third time in the past 20 seasons, the NFL playoffs will not include the New England Patriots. So it's a bit of a culture shock for all the NFL fans and for New England Patriot fans as well. It's the end of the Patriots' run of 17 consecutive seasons as well, with double-digit wins. And it's compounded the end of their season, the Patriots, with their loss of Stephon Gilmore to a partially torn quad who was placed on injured reserve earlier this week as well. Buffalo with a win away from home on Monday Night Football can sweep New England for the first time this century, and I think they will. I think they'll go into New England, and it will be party time for the Bills as they go down the stretch, and Buffalo, are starting to rock and roll. They are a team who I think are going to be really, really dangerous in the AFC when the playoffs roll around. They're coming into form right when they need to. That is the slate of games for Week 16. Let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll have a look at all the things that are happening in college football and get to your questions as well when we return on Talkin' American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday evening on Casey Radio 97.7 FM, where we've gone through and had a look at all the games that lay in store for us tomorrow and on Tuesday morning as well on Monday Night Football in the penultimate week of the NFL season, Week 16. That is a week where some teams will win and be one step closer and perhaps even sew up a playoff spot, and some teams will have their season, for all intents and purposes, end this week. We're going to turn our attention to college football now and have a bit of a look at what's happening there. And a lot of big news actually this week. The Final Four was announced, and here it is. Number 1, Alabama will play number 4, Notre Dame, in what was going to be the Rose Bowl. It was going to take place at the Rose Bowl, but it's been moved to AT&T Stadium. And the College Football Committee announced that during the week, and it said that it's been moved due to the growing number of COVID-19 cases in Southern California, so you can't really argue with that. So that will be the first semi-final between Alabama, who finished the nation as the number 1 ranked team, and Notre Dame, who got in as number 4. That will be Friday, January the 1st, or in fact, that will be Saturday morning, Australian time, and then straight after that will be number 2, Clemson, at number 3, Ohio State, and that will be from New Orleans, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome there in New Orleans, in Louisiana. So they are the 2 playoff spots. The other big bowl games to look out for as well, the Cotton Bowl Classic in Arlington, Texas. That will be between number 6 Oklahoma Sooners and number 7 Florida. And then on New Year's Day as well, American time, this will be January 2nd. You've got the Peach Bowl, which this year will feature Georgia and Cincinnati, who finished the year ranked number 8. You will then have the Rose Bowl, like I say, Notre Dame and Alabama, which won't be played at the Rose Bowl. Unfortunately, it's been moved to AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. You'll then have the Sugar Bowl, which is the other playoff semifinal, Clemson, Ohio State. And then the following day, you'll have the Fiesta Bowl, which will be Iowa State, who finished the year ranked number 10, and Oregon, who finished ranked 25. You'll then have the Orange Bowl, so North Carolina will play in the Orange Bowl this year. That's the ACC team that have made the Orange Bowl. And Texas A&M, that's from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. And then you will have the National Championship game, which will also be played at Hard Rock Stadium, which will be on January 12. And that will be obviously the winner of the Rose Bowl and the winner of the Sugar Bowl as well. The Heisman Trophy finalists were also announced during the week, and there were no real surprises. The 4 names thrown up: Mac Jones, Alabama quarterback; Trevor Lawrence, Clemson quarterback; Devontae Smith, Alabama wide receiver; and Kyle Trask, the Florida. Quarterback, the remaining players in the top 10 at number 5, you had Najee Harris, the Alabama running back. Number 6, you had Breece Hall, Iowa State running back. Number 7, you had Justin Fields, who was obviously the Ohio State quarterback. 8, Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. 9 was Ian Book, quarterback from Notre Dame. And 10 was Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida. So interesting to see a tight end make the top 10. So you've got Mac Jones, who there are only 10 passing performances of 400 or more yards in Alabama history, and Mac Jones had 4 of them this year. He has the second most passing yards in the nation. He had 18 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions against ranked opponents, and Mac Jones will become just the 3rd Alabama player and the first Crimson Tide quarterback to win the award should he win it. Trevor Lawrence is up again as well. He missed 2 games, of course, this year after a positive COVID-19 test, but still managed to total more than 2,700 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. Ranked in the top 10 nationally in yards per attempt, total offense in terms of yards per game. And if Lawrence wins the award, it will be the first Clemson player to win the award. Deshaun Watson, of course, was nominated twice, but never actually won the award. Devontae Smith is the nation's leader in receptions, receiving yards, and yards after the catch, while ranking 2nd nationally in receiving touchdowns and receiving yards per game. Smith would become the first non-quarterback to win the award since Derrick Henry, a fellow running back, a fellow Alabama skill position player, I should say, in 2015, and the first wide receiver since Desmond Howard to win it in 1991. So history is not on his side. But if you're asking me, I think Devontae Smith is the favourite to win the award this year. I think he should win, and I think he will win. And the final nominee is Kyle Trask, who leads the FBS in total touchdowns, touchdown passes, passing yards, and passing yards per game. And he's hoping to join, of course, the great Tim Tebow, Danny Werfel, and Steve Spurrier as Heisman Trophy winners from Florida after already staking his claim as one of the great Florida quarterbacks this year. We will have a virtual Heisman Trophy ceremony on Tuesday, January 5. That'll be Wednesday, January 6th, our time. And those are the names who have been nominated for the most prestigious sport in all of college football. Mac Jones from Alabama, Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, Devontae Smith from Alabama, and Kyle Trask from Florida. For what it's worth, my pick is Devontae Smith. So that's what's happening in college football. If we can go back to the pro game for just a little, for a moment, the Pro Bowl squads were announced during the week, so I'll run through those quickly. The quarterbacks, no real surprises. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Deshaun Watson from the AFC. From the NFC, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray. The running backs, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs, while from the NFC, Delvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Aaron Jones. The wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Keenan Allen, and A.J. Brown. From the AFC, and from the NFC, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, and Justin Jefferson as a rookie made the Pro Bowl. The tight ends, Travis Kelce and Darren Waller from the AFC, and TJ Hawkinson and Evan Ingram from the NFC. They've anointed fullbacks as well, Patrick Ricard from Baltimore and Kyle Juszczyk from San Francisco. While on the offensive line, the tackles, Laramie Tunsil, Eric Fisher, Orlando Brown from the AFC, and David Bakhtiari, Trent Williams, and Teron Armstead from the NFC. The guards, Quentin Nelson, Joel Batonio, and David DeCastro from the AFC, Brandon Sheriff, Elgton Jenkins, and Andrus Peat from the NFC. And the centers, Maurkice Pouncey and Ryan Kelly from the AFC, Jason Kelsey and Frank Ragnow. From the NFC, the pass rushers, Myles Garrett, and some good names here, Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, Frank Clark, TJ Watt, Bradley Chubb, Matt Judon, Cameron Jordan, Brandon Graham, Chase Young as a rookie makes his first Pro Bowl, Khalil Mack, Zadarius Smith, and Jason Pierre-Paul. The defensive tackles, Chris Jones and Cameron Hayward, and also Calais Campbell from the AFC, Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox, and Grady Jarrett from the NFC. The linebackers, Darius Leonard, Tremaine Edmonds as well from the AFC, while Bobby Wagner and Fred Warner made it from the NFC. The cornerbacks, it's a pretty young group here. Xavier Howard, Tre'Davious White, Marlon Humphrey, and Stephon Gilmore from the AFC, while from the NFC, Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Marshawn Lattimore, and James Bradbury as well, who's been a pretty good pickup for the New York Giants this year. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Justin Simmons, and Tyrann Mathieu are the safeties from the AFC, while from the NFC, Quandre Diggs, Buda Baker, and Jamal Adams. So all NFC West guys there. Diggs and Adams from Seattle, and Buda Baker, who's had a fantastic year for Arizona. Morgan Cox and Tyler Ott were the long snappers. Let's give the long snappers some love. The punters, Jake Bailey from New England and Jack Fox from Detroit. And the kickers, of course, Justin Tucker from Baltimore and Young Ho Koo as well from Atlanta, who I suspect might make the All-Pro team, not just a Pro Bowl team. And the return specialists, Andre Roberts from Buffalo and Cordarrelle Patterson from Chicago, while the special team was Matthew Slater and Nick Ballall. There won't be a Pro Bowl this year. Of course, that will be the boys just playing Madden, which will be interesting in its own right, I think, to see the banter and the guys talking back and forth and to see how competitive they take it. So that's the state of play, both in college football and a few loose ends as well to tidy up in the pro game, with the Pro Bowl squads being listed or being disclosed, I suppose, this week. To your questions, gang, you can send through questions if you like to me on Twitter at theboylives_26, or you can shoot them straight through to the Twitter or Facebook page, where you can just type in Talkin American Footy and you'll find them on socials there, like Geordie has. And Geordie asks, who was the biggest Pro Bowl snub in your opinion? Look, I don't like to be that guy that comes out and says about the, who should have made it or who shouldn't have made it. I think all the guys this year that made it, I think, are deserving, although I must admit I didn't expect Evan Ingram to make it at tight end. I think that was a bit stiff on Robert Tunyon, who had a really good year, a breakout year for the Green Bay Packers. TJ Hawkinson was the other guy. He had a pretty good year. The other one that I thought might have been a little bit stiff, or very stiff actually, was DeForest Buckner. So the defensive tackles that made it from the AFC, Chris Jones from Kansas City, Cameron Hayward from the Steelers, and Calais Campbell from the Ravens. I mean, I think DeForest Buckner probably could have got in over one of those guys. So they're a couple that I think might have been a bit unlucky not to make it. But for the most part, I think they got it pretty bang on this year. Whoever it is that picks the Pro Bowl, I think it's by voting, isn't it? Anyone can vote for that. So well done, everybody. You did a pretty good job. Although you probably could have got DeForest Buckner in there. I would have thought he had a pretty good year. Thanks for your question, Geordie. And the other question this week comes from Mitch. Does the string of close wins for the Kansas City Chiefs worry you? No, it does not. I said earlier that the Chiefs have won 6 straight games by one score or less. Obviously, this is a league where to win close games, it's really difficult. And there's almost this sort of thing where the more close games you win, the closer you become to losing. But really, none of those games the Chiefs have played, they've looked like losing. Maybe, there was one moment in the first half against Miami where Miami was sort of, they had that 30-yard sack on Mahomes, and Mahomes threw a couple of picks, albeit both of them were on tipped passes. But there was a moment in the first half there where I thought, oh, look out, they might be in a little bit of trouble. But of course, Mahomes weaves his magic and whatever, and they win that game. And that's what happens. As long as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have the ball last and they are within a score, Kansas City will win. So there's no issues from my point of view with Kansas City being involved in all these close games. Okay, thanks for your questions this week, gang. Quickly before I go, the games on television tomorrow. 7, mate, at 5 a.m. is the Giants and the Ravens, and over on ESPN is the big game from Pittsburgh, the Steelers and the Colts at 8:30 on ESPN. We've got a huge showdown in the NFC West. That's the Rams and the Seahawks. That will be one worth watching. While at the same time over on 7, mate, you've got the Eagles and the Cowboys going at it. And then Sunday night on ESPN, the Packers at the Titans, and Monday Night Football in the NFC East, Buffalo, who will be looking to inflict some more pain on the New England Patriots. Enjoy the football action tomorrow, gang. I'm going to see you back here from 10 p.m. next Sunday night for Talkin American Footy to discuss everything that happened and look ahead as well to the final week of the regular season, and after that we will have the playoffs. Enjoy the football, gang, and I'll see you next Sunday night on KC Radio 97.7 FM from 10 p.m. to talk all things American football. I'll see you then, gang. Bye-bye.